Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager.
And I'm Brian Michael. Today we have another wonderful show for you, filled with actually a few different films. We've got a horror film, we've got an adventure film, we've got a Western, we've got a foreign film, we've got an Oscar-nominated film. We've got an awful lot going on. So before we start, make sure if you're watching on YouTube to go ahead and click that subscribe button and also click the little bell that gives you notifications when we post a new episode. It also gives John Travolta a new toupee, or a hairpiece, or a little bit of help up above. Either way, he needs all the help he can get. The last one I saw looked like a dead kitten, and I feel bad. Anyway, so the clip you saw at the top of the show is for First Man. This is Damien Chazelle's latest film from the maker of Whiplash and La La Land. And this stars Ryan Gosling, who plays Neil Armstrong in a wonderful performance. And it follows Neil Armstrong's journey from the Earth all the way to the moon. But also what it tells a story of is his home life with his wife, played by Claire Foy, in a wonderful performance. Who's most likely to be nominated. Since he is a very taciturn man, she is the one who gets to have all of the emotion and actually several of the really big scenes. And several times where I love when she calls him to the table and says, no, you need to sit down and talk to your family. You need to talk to us. You need to communicate. You need to do this. Ryan Gosling, who does such an amazing job of someone who has, rarely, he smiles like 4 times in this film, and the rest of the time it's just a straight face, but the entire time you see his wheels constantly turning. He's done a performance like this before in a film that I loved called Drive, and here he does it again without doing an awful lot. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, and I really enjoyed his performance, and she is fantastic. A lot of great close-ups, which is something I really enjoy.
A lot of close-ups in this
And
movie.
I really love the fact that I mentioned this to you before, that she didn't have they didn't really glamorize her. They didn't do a lot of makeup on her. You actually see the lines on her face. You actually get to see, when she expresses, you can actually see all of that stuff. So it's a very brave performance for an actress not to wear so much makeup, or a peer not to have so much makeup. I really enjoyed this film. It did a great job also with the directing of it as well. When we get to the Journey to the Moon, which I've seen a million times before in films, but you still kind of get taken back and you really get caught up into it. So it's actually a really good film.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well, and I think one of the things that's interesting about it is about the journey to the moon, but it's really not about. That's not really what the film's about.
Sure.
So as you mentioned, it's his home life, and it's also this idea of grief. Or death plays a central figure in the film.
Yes.
So I think there is one that we probably don't want to mention, that we don't want to give away. But then there's also his friends. Throughout. I mean, it's a dangerous profession. This is during the time where it was very experimental space exploration. I mean, not that it still isn't, but it was very dangerous. And he lost quite a few good friends who had failed missions before they got to his. And the drive that kept him going, it seems less about his curiosity about the moon than more almost stubbornness. Like he wanted to beat it because it had taken so much from him in a way. So many friends and so many close people that he loved had been lost. It was almost became, I wouldn't want to say vengeance, but it became almost this, in a way it's very interesting. It's, Damien Chazelle, I was trying to think of what makes this similar to a movie like Whiplash or La La Land. But in a way, it's very similar. Especially, I was thinking with Whiplash, where a man, where he is willing to keep drumming until his hands are bleeding. Here's a guy who's going to just keep getting in there and keep going to try to get to this mission, no matter what, no matter how many, friends of his pass away, no matter how many horrible things happen. He's just determined to get there. So I thought that was really interesting.
It's the quest for perfection.
Yes.
And that's what's really impressive, because to make it to the moon, it had to be perfect. I mean, there was a couple things where they showed a little animation of what's going on, and you really get to see that, not only just landing, but then also leaving and having to hit it just right in orbit in order to dock. And I mean, there were some really tense moments because we had some failed missions that happened beforehand, and so it really did keep you on the edge of your seat. And it was a long film, but it didn't feel long at all. Because I remember one time I clocked it, we still have an hour to go, and it went by like that. So it was pretty impressive.
About 2.5 hour film. Yeah, it is long, but it did go by, and because it has these different kind of pieces, I think, to it. It's not just about the moon, because you do have the domestic front. And Claire Foy, I definitely
she's
think
so good.
I think she's definitely, if she didn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actress, I would be shocked. I mean, she is, and in fact, the scene we showed at the beginning, I think, is her big Oscar bait moment when she tells him, "You're going to sit down and tell the kids. I'm not going to be the one to do that." It's a great performance. The visual style, as you mentioned, lots of close-ups. To me, maybe a little too much. I wouldn't mind if he pulled back the camera once in a while, but that's just my own, personal opinion on that. And then he also shows something we haven't seen in a lot of space movies: the protests against the space program, including Gil Scott-Heron's great Whitey on the Moon piece, which is performed in the movie. Fantastic. And that's a classic piece by Gil Scott-Heron, but it's great that that's in the movie, and that at least, even though it's not about that, and it's obviously more sympathetic to the space exploration program, it at least gives that perspective on there. Like, there was these other things going on, and this was a lot of money to be spending on going to outer space. So
if you allow me, I would say it's in rarefied air, of something like The Right Stuff or Apollo 13, two other films I think that.
So are you giving this really 4 stars?
I give it 3.5.
3.5 for me as well.
It was, but it's I really. I had high expectations because of the director, but I didn't have such great expectations because I've kind of seen this movie done before. We've seen these ones done before a lot of times. And actually, I was really impressed how much it really pulled me into. And the emotional scene when he gets on the moon, which I really enjoyed the fact that we didn't see the flag planted, because that's not necessarily what that was about. It was, again, we kept it very personal.
Well, it was about that personal,
and
even when you see the American flag, it's on their outfits and everything.
Yeah, but what he does personally really blew me away.
Yeah, it was good. Really, and I can't say there was anything I thought, if they'd done this, it would be a 4-star film. It just didn't kind of rise to that level for me.
Well, it's hard to do. All right, so we'll move on to our next film, which is titled Halloween, which is the third movie that's taped to Halloween. This is the 11th film and the third or fourth reboot, remake, restart of the series, I think. So let's take a look at the clip right now. Okay, so this is from director David Gordon Green, who was one of Angela's very favorites. And then he made Pineapple Express and started making some rather silly movies that maybe she didn't see or might be embarrassed to admit that she has. But they've rebooted, I should say. This is a direct sequel to the original Halloween. So now it's, I just realized
40 years later, as I keep saying.
It's like it's like H4O is what they should have called it. Anyway, this one also does star Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, who has been waiting for Michael Myers to escape. And of course, 40 years later, the day before Halloween, he does. And so now she's ready to hunt him down. Of course, she does have a daughter and a granddaughter, a daughter who she helped raise in the fear of Michael Myers, who has kind of rejected her and her ways, and a granddaughter that's just trying to connect everyone together. Of course, once Michael Myers does get away or does get free, so the death toll starts to go up from there. Now, I'm a big fan of the original one, and I've seen all of them. And
which is a feat unto itself. I just have to say that you've seen
Paul
all of them.
Paul Rudd got his start in a Halloween film.
There's how many of these? What, 14 or something?
This is like 11 or something.
11.
And so, the thing about the first one is it inspired, it wasn't really the first slasher film, Black Christmas was, but they considered this one the first slasher film. And then they had all the knockoffs of the Friday the 13th, and it came all the different ways of just to kill people while they're naked or killing people in grotesque ways. And it really wasn't so much in the first one because it was just terrifying the way that happened, and it was just the way that it was done.
It was something
in terms
new.
of the ambience, and in terms of the setting, and in terms of the tension. And this one actually does a really good job. There's a couple of scenes where she's searching for him that were extremely tense, that actually had me on the edge of my seat, and I really enjoyed that portion of it. Just some of the ways he killed people, I just found a little too bloody. And I know the teeth thing one is a really big one they keep showing. I didn't find it to be truly what Michael Myers was, and that's kind of what this film and this series has gone up against as the people the fan of the original one, trying to keep it pure, and you can't necessarily do that. I liked the film. It did scare me several times. When I went home, I did kind of like, ooh, let's walk through the house, though you don't really want to go looking for it, but let's do the walk through the house.
Oh, you did.
And go to bed. Oh, yeah.
I think you're more scared by these movies than I am. Yeah, I didn't find the movie very scary. That said, I'm giving it 3 stars. I thought the script had some nice, smart touches that maybe previous ones that I've seen, and I haven't seen all 11 like you.
You've seen, what, 3?
Yeah, something like that. But, in general, for this genre, I would say the thing about the slasher slasher genres that became old, like you said, because it just became, the naked women being victimized and hunted by the slasher guy. But what this film does is sort of turn that conceit on its head, and now you have Jamie Lee Curtis, the victim from 40 years ago, in a way hunting him. They're both hunting. I mean, he's hunting her, but she's hunting him back. I also think that the film also, and especially in the current era, with so much talk about sexual assault, sexual abuse, and abuse in general, does a really good job of dealing with PTSD of victims.
Yes.
Both the Jamie Lee Curtis character, but in a way her daughter too, who was raised in this kind of environment of a mother who had been victimized, and her just not understanding, and then she finally does understand at the end, but really understanding why her mother is as messed up as she is, really. And he really spends quite a bit of time on that psychology, and I appreciated that. That's something different that you haven't seen in a horror movie. Like, what happens to the survivors of these horrible things, and so I liked that. There were some smart things. Again, like you said, though, the way it kind of almost followed, when they went from house to house was almost too predictable for me. Most of the kills were not surprising.
Yeah, but I did like the fact that all of a sudden the way they pushed this one, they said whatever's in front of him, he just wants to kill. He's like a shark, and he just kind of went from house to house and just kind of was killing people until he kind of.
Yeah, except for one that he bypassed. That was just, I felt like them saying we can't show.
Well, we
do that
can't
in
do
a
that,
movie.
but it puts you up to the, put up to the brink of that. I also like, there's a role reversal. There's a costume outfit. I won't give things away, but there's a role reversal in that, and that's what pretty much the whole film does. Because I've seen Halloween many, many times, didn't need to rewatch it again for this film. There's a lot of different things that happen towards the last half of the film that it's a role reversal where what had happened to him or happened to her now is happening to the other one. So that was really smart. There's a lot of really cool Easter eggs for the people that are big fans of it, and I'm able to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, though, not as scary, especially in light of some of the great horror movies in recent years that we've had, movies like Hereditary, smarter horror movies that are out there. I didn't find it super scary, but I liked the twist that he did with it.
The thing that really upset me, though, and we say this a lot, but so many of the big surprises were given away in the trailers.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to avoid a lot of the trailers, but I'd seen some of them because you can't avoid sometimes. And a lot of them were, and it was just like, oh my gosh, we totally saw, I knew what was going to happen. I'm like, I know he's in the closet waiting right there, so let's just get to the closet. And that's sure enough what happened. That was really bad. But I did enjoy Jamie Lee Curtis with the very thirsty wig, by the way, as Laurie Strode. She did a really good job, and she wasn't afraid, no makeup again. Wasn't afraid to look her age and be the the cantankerous.
Not just no makeup, but she looks naturally her age. She doesn't look messed up. She doesn't look like she's had a lot of work done.
Yeah.
So she's still able to make good expressions, which I know you shouldn't even have to point that out, but you do sometimes. So okay. Yeah. So we both agree on that one, 3 stars, and we'll move on to our next movie, which is The Sisters Brothers, and we have a clip. Okay, you saw a clip for The Sisters Brothers, and this is about Charlie and Eli's sisters, who are 2 hired assassins sent to capture a chemist played by Riz Ahmed. The assassins are John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix, and Jake Gyllenhaal is also in the movie as a very intelligent and learned scout who was actually supposed to originally locate the chemist for the Sisters Brothers, and then they were supposed to come in and then do the dirty work, but their plan goes awry, and it takes them all the way through Southern Oregon, Myrtle Creek, Jacksonville, and down into San Francisco and the Bay Area, and that's a lot of fun. Now, this movie is directed by Jacques Audiard, so some of you may not know his name. You should. This is a fantastic French director who up until this point has done at least 3 4-star films. The Prophet, Rust and Bone, and Deepan, which was my top film of that year.
My top 10.
Yeah, and in your top 10 as well. And I think Rust and Bone was also in our top 10, and I can't remember if The Prophet was or if we saw it later, but would have been definitely, they're all great films. So one of the things that Jacques Audiard is really interested in is what I would call wounded masculinity. So men making their way in the world that somehow have found themselves sort of at odds with what's going on in the world. And what he brings us here it's set in 1851 in the Wild West, is a very quickly changing Wild West. We see it literally changing as they're traveling from Southern Oregon into California. All of a sudden, they're in a store. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is John C. Reilly. They're in just the general store because they have to get supplies because it's a couple days until the next town. We see that in Old West movies. And you see John C. Reilly's looking, and he finds this toothbrush with this little canister of powder. And he's like looking at it, and he's trying to figure out, what is this thing? And the store owner comes over and says, have you seen one of these before? It's a toothbrush. And John C. Reilly says, well, what does it do? He says, well, you use it, you put it in your teeth, you brush your teeth, and it makes your teeth last longer, and it gives you good breath. And he's like, huh. He becomes sort of fascinated with the toothbrush, becomes kind of an ongoing joke. There's multiple things like that throughout the movie. We see like their first experience with a running toilet inside a hotel in San Francisco, and their reaction to that. There's great like comedic moments. I would call this a black comedy Western, but it's mostly a drama, but it's got very black comedic moments if you like dark humor, which I do, and I laughed out loud several times. It's a great cast, phenomenal acting across the board. I don't know if it's because he has so much to measure up to with his previous films.
Yep, here's the problem.
Because those are, and I feel bad because I feel like if I just seen this movie and I didn't know who Jacques Audiard was, maybe I would have given this 4 stars.
Yeah.
Because I can't say there's anything wrong with it per se.
In many ways, it's kind of like a McCabe and Miss Miller type Western where it's just not your typical Western. They kind of ramble and they talk and they just kind of go along. And normally you, if this was somebody else, you'd be like, wow. But because it's him and it's John C. Reilly and it's Joaquin Phoenix and Jake Gyllenhaal who are just, hitting it out of the park, it's such a great cast that you can't help but be like, this is gotta have to be like amazing in order to get 4 stars out of us.
I know, which is sort of
unfortunate.
I feel
kind of bad, but I did enjoy the movie. I liked it, but then with the ending, which again I
don't
enjoyed.
have a problem with the ending.
Well, no, but I thought for a moment I thought, wow, I don't see Westerns ending this way. That's not at all what should have happened.
No, it's totally different from a typical Western.
So I really enjoyed that, but because it's really hard not to have.
And it looks great. I mean, it's definitely has stylistic flourishes. It looks beautiful.
Angela, there's a shootout in the very beginning of this film, and it's done at night, and all you see is the blasts from the guns.
That's it.
And I don't know if I've ever seen that or if I just have only seen it once or twice, but it was really, really cool. Yeah. And they did it again later in the film, and I love that because you can't tell what's going on and who's going. And and
they get into the chemistry of like how this guy gets into the gold mining, and it goes in a totally different direction than I thought it was going to. I thought, okay, these guys are going after these 2 guys, and then that's what the plot is, and then the plot goes totally in a different direction, which I love. I almost want to give it 4 stars, but I'm giving it 3.5. I really, really highly recommend it.
Yes.
I just really hard when you make a movie as great as Rust and Bone as T-Pan. I mean, which, who knows, 10 years from now we might be saying those are classics. Those
well,
are
but we have 10 years from now, we'll watch this and be like, holy crap, why did we have this?
Yeah, we might be
underrating
underrating this. Yeah, but it's definitely worth seeing if you're a fan of Westerns or especially different kinds of Westerns. McCabe and Miss Miller is a great reference point because it kind of ambles along and does its own thing. I'm a
real film snob. I know it.
A real film snob, yes. Yeah. I know you do. Okay, so we'll move on to our next film. Are you also giving it 3.5, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to our next movie, which is Zama, and it is about an officer of the Spanish crown stationed in South America who is waiting for a transfer to, in his opinion, a better place. And in the meantime, while he's waiting for his transfer, he does menial tasks for various high-ranking officials. That's sort of what the plot is. But this is not a movie that's about plot. This is the director, Lucretia Martel. She's from Argentina. She previously did a film that I love called The Headless Woman, which was one of my favorite films of that year. This is a film that is kind of breaking down colonialism. Oh boy, I've lost some people already. But this officer, Zama, he's part of colonialism. He is the colonialist, but he is now becoming victimized by it because he is slowly wasting away while he sits in this place that he doesn't want to be anymore and becomes sort of part of the background in the landscape. You can literally see him being broken down piece by piece as the movie goes on. And I found that fascinating. It's got some great visual set pieces.
It's a beautiful looking film.
It's a beautiful looking film. Unfortunately, there was a film a couple years ago called Embrace of the Serpent that I talked about endlessly to anyone who would listen that made my top 10. Also about colonialism from the colonizer's perspective about how bad it is for the actual colonizer. And I felt like that movie did such a better job with this subject that for me this kind of came in like, okay, yeah, but I've already kind of seen this topic done and I've seen it done better and more interestingly, so I guess this was hard for me.
There was a couple of times because we watched this together. We're like, so where are we going? What's happening?
What's happening in this movie?
What's going on?
There was quite a few times. Yeah,
he looks different. How much time has passed? I mean, this film does not lead you by the nose whatsoever. It happens in front of you, and you got to watch it. It's a beautiful looking film. I remember him just trying to get back to his family. Wasn't it his family that he's trying to get back to? And so, the paperwork's getting lost, or working on the paperwork, and then like, no, that's going to take longer than. No,
you need to. And every single new governor comes in and says, you need to do this for me before that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he does that, and they're like, yeah, we'll see you later. I'm getting transferred,
exactly.
and then he's still there, and it just keeps going.
It's
on
a good
and
film. It's a very interesting film. I definitely if you like cinematography, and if you don't like Hollywood films that lead you by the nose exactly where to go, this is definitely going to be your cup of coffee. I'm a little surprised that you don't like it a little more than this, but because I'm assuming 3 stars?
3 stars.
That's
Yeah,
only
well,
like 3
again, I
stars.
loved Headless Woman, her previous film, but as I was watching, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I've seen this subject done better, and that was part of the problem.
Yeah.
I think if I hadn't seen Embrace of the Serpent, which I just blew me away, and already took on that same exact topic with such weight, I just kind of was like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's bad.
I just kept waiting for them to fight Thanos.
Colonialism is bad. I get it. I was sort of like, I'm with you here. So I don't know if I needed 2 hours on it.
Colonialism is bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so for you on the radio, I just looked around because we're here. All right, so on to our next one, which is the Oscar-nominated films. Where I think I had too many drinks and said, "Hey, we should watch movies that have been nominated for Academy Awards." And so we watched Foreign Correspondent, which is a Alfred Hitchcock film. In fact, he had 2 films that were nominated for Best Picture that year. It was a big coup for him. And this is I forgot to write the director or the actor's name. It was Joe McCrea.
Yep.
Joe McCrea stars as a thank you. Stars as a journalist who was sent to Europe just before the World War to kind of get the scoop on what's going on over there. And once he's over there, he gets involved in intrigue because that's a Hitchcock movie. And this is early Hitchcock. Actually, he had already made a couple classics before this. And you can really see the set pieces that kind of come in, the setup. There's a great scene in the windmill. There's a fantastic closing scene where there's a plane crash that for the time and period it came out was really impressive. It was actually nominated for Best Effects. It had our Best Art Direction, Best Picture, Best Supporting Role, a Screenplay, and Cinematography, and it didn't win any of them. And the
Hitchcock
problem,
always getting robbed at the Oscars.
At the Oscars, yeah. You just got box office success. And but the problem with this film, it's Joe McCrea. He just doesn't have. He just says lines. When he's in westerns or he's playing someone who's matter of fact, it kind of works. But in this movie, I just didn't.
He's not a reporter. He's not a reporter.
Well, he's my key into it. When you look at like Jimmy Stewart or Cary Grant and stuff, there's somebody you automatically care so much about. He just kind of comes in and is like, hey, and he just says his lines kind of quick and smart.
Yeah, but he's also supposed to be playing an investigative reporter.
Smarmy, but he's kind
doesn't...
of he's smart aleck, and you don't really, care too much for him. And he kind of finds this girl that he likes, and I'm like, yeah, but I just didn't really. He just doesn't have some of the warmth. You're going to get a lot of technical stuff with a Hitchcock movie. That's why you have to have like a Jimmy Stewart or a Cary Grant, someone who's a movie star and can act and can pull you in there regardless of how sterile some of those scenes may be.
Yeah, you have to have an actor with a lot of warmth. Yeah, and he also seems miscast in terms of being a reporter because you see like Cary Grant and like His Girl Friday or something. You have to have that kind of inquisitive. He's supposed to be an investigative reporter, and he's just kind of lollygagging around like, I guess I'll go up in this mill now. I don't know. I was sort of like, what? You're investigating, it's like the brink of World War II. You think there'd be a little bit more urgency to what's going on here. George Sanders comes in doing the George Sanders thing that he did in every studio movie, playing like the British fop type of thing. Like, he plays that role so well. I always wondered, like, did he get tired of just always playing that guy in like every like 5 films a year? Because George Sanders plays that exact character. Sometimes he's a bad version of that guy. He's a bad guy. Sometimes he's a good guy. But he's essentially always that character. So there's some fun things. Actually, the person that was nominated for supporting actor was the guy who played the one that they kidnapped.
Yeah.
Which I was like, okay. Well, maybe it was a hard, tough year for supporting acting. I enjoyed it okay. I gave it 3 stars, but it is definitely not a great Hitchcock film. Yeah. It kind of dragged on for me. I got a little bit bored in the midway, and I was kind of walking around the house. I'm like, they could speed this up a little bit. Let's get some choppy editing or something going here.
But that plane crash, though, that scene in the end is really good. Yeah, I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool set piece, but the ending did. But there was like whole middle of the movie where just kind of, I'm like, okay, and he's dating her, and I'm like, let's get to some action here.
And for those of you at home that are laughing because of the George Sanders mark she made, I'll explain it to her after the show. I know exactly what you're laughing at.
Why
he did get really bored at one point.
Oh, did he? Well, you could just tell me. Okay.
He wrote a note, said I'm bored, and jumped out the window.
Oh,
That's
shoot.
how he ended his life.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry. Well,
oops.
Sorry.
So anyway.
Guess he did get bored playing that character. Sorry, George Sanders.
So we both can highly recommend First Man, as well as recommend Halloween. We recommended Zuma, as well as highly recommend Sister Brothers, and maybe in 10 years we'll revisit it and go, what were we thinking? This is a classic. Who knows?
That's definitely my top pick of the week is the Sisters Brothers. If I had
Oh,
to
see,
say,
mine would go with First Man.
you're going with First
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
Sisters Brothers for me. If you really like something idiosyncratic with great acting, that's the one to go for. To me, it was like I haven't seen this exact movie.
This is the time of year for Oscar bait, and that's what First Man is. Big.
Well, both
big
of them are
Oscar
great,
bait,
worth saying for sure. Okay.
And then we both recommended a Foreign Correspondent. And, and if you think that he was as dull as I thought he was, please let us know. Send us you can hop on our website at realfilmsnobs.com and you can submit a viewer's pick, or you can let us know what you think of the show, or you can let me know if you think that this tie doesn't go with the shirt. As always, you can like us on Facebook, you can follow us on Twitter, you can listen to us on KMUZ, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, you can visit our website, as I mentioned before. You can watch us in Corvallis, in Silverton, and of course here in Salem. And we want to thank our amazing sponsors, our wonderful crew, my fantastic co-host, and we want to thank you for watching. Have a great day and great movies.